Okay, I'm here with Ed Horn, and Ed, what is your birth date and your current address?
9 August 1924, and my current address is 46 Balfour Road East, Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, 33418-7023.
Okay, and the only other person attending this interview is myself, Carlton Cartwright, and I'm the CEO and founder of the Children's Coalition Incorporated. Ed, what branch of service were you in?
At the time, I was in the Army Air Force in World War II.
And where did you serve?
I served in England, and I was a pilot and a second lieutenant, and flew a Martin B-26, and I got shot down on May the 28th of 1944 and became a prisoner of war in Germany.
What rank were you when you separated?
Army Air Force.
What rank?
I was a first lieutenant.
Oh, okay.
But I stayed in the reserve, and I was called back during the Korean War, and I finally retired as a major in the United States Air Force.
Oh, okay. Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted.
Where were you living at the time?
I was living in Charleroi, Pennsylvania.
Why did you join?
Well, because I wanted to fly.
Why did you pick the service branch that you joined?
Well, actually, I had picked the Navy and went to see them and got through all the tests, but I wound up, they rejected me because I had this horrible overbite of my teeth, and they said I couldn't fly in Navy aircraft because I couldn't suck on an oxygen tube. So I went across the street and enlisted in the Army Air Force. And the only difference between the two services was the Army swore you in. So I was already in on August the 28th of 1942 and didn't know whether I was going to become a pilot or not.
Do you recall your first days in service?
Yeah, they weren't very happy ones. I wound up in December of 42 going to San Antonio, Texas to the Army Air Force Classification Center, and that's then where I had all the tests and things, and was finally accepted as an aviation cadet to begin my pilot training. One of the problems was when we got there, they didn't have any uniforms for us, so I lived in a pair of fatigues for several weeks and stood guard duty that way. I wound up getting the German measles, and because most of these camps had all sorts of epidemics, and I had never had any childhood diseases.
Okay. Okay,
Am I giving you too much?
nah, you're fine. Tell me about your boot camp training experience. You
Well,
remember your instructors?
No, I don't, because we went through first pre-flight, and that's we had an upper and lower class system like they have in the academies, and when I first got in there, I was in the class of 43I, and I had to double time every place, and I had to sit on the edge of my chair to be able to eat, and I couldn't eat unless I had the permission of my upperclassmen. They also issued demerits, and we had to walk these off on the weekend carrying a rifle. And but I got through pre-flight and got sent to primary flying school, where I soloed, and out of 201 students that went to the flying school, only 99 of us went on to basic. They had washed out some 50% of the class, which I thought was kind of unreasonable. And from then I went on to advanced training at Allington Field, basic at Waco, Texas, and then from there to Allington Field, where I went to twin engine advanced, and I graduated on October the 1st of 1943 with commission as a second lieutenant and as a pilot. I was 19 years old.
Okay, which wars did you serve in?
I served in World War II, and I was also called back since I was in the reserve during the Korean War for 2 years, and but because of the work I did, I was stationed at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base doing research and development, and they yanked me back there instead of sending me to Korea.
How long were you in the military altogether?
20 years, including 5.5 years of active duty, and the rest of it was reserve time.
And what year did you go in?
You mean when I enlisted?
Started, yeah.
In August of 28th of 1942.
Gotcha. Okay, where exactly did you go?
When I graduated,
Yes, sir.
I was assigned to a B-26 group in Lakeland, Florida, where I became a co-pilot and learned to fly the Martin B-26. And on the after being there from middle of October to December, I was sent to Savannah, Georgia, Savannah Army Airfield, where I picked up one brand new B-26 and two R-2800 engines, and I had to sign a government slip for $192,000, and I asked the sergeant, I said, "Hey, am I responsible for this?" He says, "Don't worry about it. The airplane's expendable and so are you." Little did I know how right it was, because I was going to originally get shot down.
Okay.
You want me to continue?
Yeah, go ahead.
Then in December of 1943, we flew to West Palm Beach, Florida, where I now live, and we were stationed at Morrison Field, named after a woman, and we were prepared for overseas duty there. And then we, in early January, we flew our airplanes some 9,000 nautical miles from West Palm Beach to Puerto Rico to British Guiana and Brazil, Natal, and Brazil, and then to Liberia, French West Africa, and then from there to England. And we started combat operations. I got there in February of 1944, and we started combat operations in March. On my 23rd mission, we were bombing a railroad marshalling yard, and I got shot down. The aircraft was hit by anti-aircraft, by anti-aircraft fire, the 88 millimeters that the Germans had, and the right engine was on fire, and eventually airplane fire, and we had to bail the crew out. Out of my 6-man crew, 2 of us became POWs, 2 of us wound up evading through the French underground, and 2 were killed. The other pilot I flew with was murdered coming down in this chute. He was machine gun. And my tail gunner to this day is still MIA.
Okay. See more?
Well, and then I was sent, captured near Abbeville, France, and the Germans sent us to a place called Oberursel in Germany, near Frankfurt, and we were put in solitary confinement. And after a week and a half of bread and water, they sent us to an interrogation center near there. And after I went through interrogation, that's where I learned that the D-Day had started, and the German guy who interrogated me was an instructor pilot at Floyd Benner Field. He spoke better English than I did. And they had a complete dossier on me, knew where I went to flying school and when I graduated and what hometown I was in. But from there they sent me to a place in southeast of Berlin, about 100 miles in Poland, called Stalag Luft 3. Now, you may have heard of this because this is where the movie The Great Escape was made. And this is where the RAF POWs, we wound up building 3 tunnels, and eventually they got out, they were supposed to get out 201 POWs, but instead when they came up out of the tunnel, they were outside the fence, but they were not in the woods, and so a German guard stepped into the hole, and so 82 of them got out, but they captured several of them, and but 76 got out. The purpose was really not to escape from Germany, but it was to affect the infrastructure of the German army. You can imagine, with that many prisoners running around Germany, that they spent an awful lot of assets trying to find them. Well, they found all but 2, who eventually got back to England. Of the 76 that they finally captured, why 50 of them were murdered outright, and their ashes, or they were cremated, and their ashes sent back to Stalag Luft 3, and we gave them an honorable burial there. After being in Stalag Luft 3 for until January of 1945, the Russians moved in. We thought we would be liberated, but they marched us out, some 10,000 of us, in the dead of winter, and I had my feet frozen and my hands frozen, and they marched us for about 60-some kilometers, and put us on the infamous boxcars they call 40 and 8, where they would hold 40 people or 8 animals, and they had put some 60 to 70 of us in there, and we drove for several days, and were only allowed out once. Everybody was suffering from diarrhea and from other problems. My next camp was in Nuremberg, Germany, at a place called Stalag 13B, and we were right close to the railroad marshalling yards, which was a prime target for the 8th Air Force and the RAF, and they wound up bombing us, but eventually they knew where we were. After being there for a month, they marched us out again because the Allies were coming in from the Western Front, and they moved us to a camp called Stalag 7A. This camp was originally built for 30,000 prisoners. We now had 130,000 prisoners there. And at that point in time, then they moved us out and moved us there. On April the 29th, after I'd been confined for 11 months and 1 day, on April the 29th, Sunday, just several days before, we heard that President Roosevelt had died. But then we were liberated by the 3rd Army, 14th Armored Division, General George Patton. And we got to see old Blood and Guts. He came into the camp, and the first thing he said to it, "I bet you bastards are glad to see me," and which we were. And from there, we were taken to a rehabilitation camp in Le Havre, Germany, in Le Havre, France, and we were deloused and given physicals, uniforms, and money and things. At this point in time, I went from what I originally came in as 150 pounds to 105. And so they then put us on a troop ship home. We got home in May, and at landing in Boston at Camp Fort Miles Standish, and then we were sent on leave for 90 days, and then I was sent back to San Antonio, Texas, where I was eventually released. So for me, the war was over then.
Okay. Okay.
You won't.
Were there how many people? How many people were in your unit? How large was your unit?
What?
A squadron or?
Well, we
group,
were
or?
a squadron, yeah.
How many people were in that?
I don't remember.
Were there a lot of
exactly.
casualties?
Yes, we had quite a few. The day I got shot down, that was our second mission. In the morning, we went to bomb a bridge near Paris, and this was 10 days before D-Day, and we lost 5 crews. That's 30 people who got shot down by anti-aircraft fire.
Okay. Were you awarded any medals or citations?
Yeah, I have the European Theater of Operation with 2 clusters, and I had World War II Victory Medal and the World War II Reserve Medal, and also the Prisoner of War Medal.
Were you? I guess you were involved in a lot of battle planning.
No.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
That time I was only a second lieutenant.
Okay.
Remember.
Okay. All right. How did you stay in touch with your family while you were in the service?
Well, when we by email, you know, before I was a POW, and then we had we were allowed so many postcards a month and a few letter forms to write home to our family. These are regular POW forms.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the worst things that happened to me that really demoralized me was that I got a sweater that was knitted by a Red Cross group in, I think it was Buffalo, New York, and I sent them a card to that chapter and thanking them for and how much it meant for me that they knitted that sweater. It kept me warm, and I got a card back. Eventually it said, if we had known we were knitting this for cowards, we wouldn't have done it. And that really, really hurt me. Even when we got back, there was people thought that POWs were cowards.
Really?
Yeah. And so,
Incredible. Okay, before, after, during, overall, what was the food like in the military?
well, when we were in the cadets, it was good. In England, it was powdered milk, and when I was POW, of course, we lived on bread and water and some potatoes and the bread, a loaf of bread a week. But then we got, when I was in Stalag Luft 3, we got Red Cross parcels through the International Red Cross, and they helped supplement our diet. But as I said, I lost some 50 pounds, over the 11 months that I was a POW.
Was there anything special you did for good luck?
Well, we, we played volleyball, and we played softball and things like that. Sports was, our biggest activity. And, but it was really boring, and we had several people who, went off their rockers and went across the warning wires. One guy, a little RAF sergeant, had been in POW for some 5 years. He climbed up on the fence, and they murdered him with a machine gun and left him hanging there for several weeks. Let us know that escaping was not an option.
Okay. So this is an obvious question. It's, did you feel pressure? And tell me about the pressure and the stress that you felt.
It was fortunately, as I said, my family eventually knew that I was a POW, but all these other movements to other camps and things, they were never aware of that. So it was always a concern. The Germans stuck pretty much to the Geneva Convention if it was to their benefit. But when they moved all 130,000 of us down in the Bavarian pocket there, to use us as bartering bait to get a better armistice. And of course, they tried that and sent the messages through some of our camp commanders to Eisenhower, but Eisenhower would, and of course the Joint Chiefs of Staff would hear nothing about giving them. They had to have an outright surrender, Mm-hmm. So
No compromise.
yeah, no compromise.
Mm-hmm. How did people entertain themselves?
We had through the International Red Cross, we got instruments, and we had a band. When we were in the first camp, we got them through the YMCA and through the Salvation Army, and through the International Red Cross. We had people who taught different courses, and we even had a theater. And when I talked to some of the other POWs and friends of mine, that really had it bad, they didn't get any food, they were beaten, they were tortured, and when you hear these things, well, the fact that I was an American airman, the German Air Force general, I can't think of his names right now, big fat guy, Hermann Goering, talked Hitler into giving him responsibility for all airmen.
Okay.
So we got, I think, better treatment than the Army guys, and some of the other people.
Okay.
So it was a good deal to be an airman. But of course, after we got out of Stalag Luft 3, well, things got progressively worse. With the forced marches in the dead of winter, in boxcars, and being bombed and strafed by our own people, who, the trains weren't marked with Red Crosses or anything like that. And so I'm very fortunate. And of course, after the war, I said I joined the reserve, and I started school under the GI Bill. I'm grateful to the people of this country for, giving me that opportunity.
Yeah.
So I worked my butt off going to Penn State University, and I got an engineering degree in aeronautical engineering. So I graduated in 1949 and couldn't get a job because the war was over and nobody wanted engineers. But I did have one job offer from the Air Force at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and I took that job at $2,200 a year, and I wound up, that was my employer for 30 years. And of course, during the time I was there, I was called back during the Korean War, but they sent me right back to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base because of the programs I was working on.
Right.
So I'm very fortunate. I have had a wonderful wife of 60 years. She just passed away, and I have a wonderful son who's taking care of me now. And I'm president of my bond group. We still meet, and we're going to meet this year. Of course, my son does all the work, and he's my guardian angel. I could probably be in some sort of a nursing home if it weren't for him.
Right.
I said I'm grateful to the people of this country and to the Veterans Administration for the care that they give me.
Okay. What did you do when you were on leave?
Well, I of course had all that back pay for 11 months and 1 day, and I'm sort of ashamed of myself that I didn't spend that much time with my family. So I was out running around and drinking, and that's when I decided after about 3 months of that I was going to wind up an alcoholic if I didn't get into school. So that's why when I applied to Carnegie Tech in Pittsburgh and Penn State University and State College, Pennsylvania, and MIT, and were accepted all three. But I decided to go to Penn State because it was out in the middle of nowhere, and you couldn't get a drink unless you belonged to some organization. and I really didn't have time, so I straightened myself out. And but the government created the biggest bunch of bums, I think, during the time period right after the war was over. You know, because every GI who was in the service, they could get $20 for 52 weeks. $20 was a lot of money, so they wound up, you know, nobody was going to go to work, so or go to school. I never took that up. I decided to go to college, and that's the best move I ever made.
Right. Okay. Do you recall any particularly humorous or unusual events?
Well, I said one of them I remember is that a couple of them I remember. One, when I was here at West Palm Beach getting ready to go overseas, why, as I said, I was still 18 years old, and I finally was growing a mustache, and I wound up you know, going into West Palm Beach one night when they took us off of quarantine. When I woke up the next morning, why, you know, somebody had dry shaved me, and that's the last time I ever tried to grow a mustache. And I tell this story about I wear jockey shorts. I don't wear boxer shorts, because when I bailed out of the airplane that was on fire, why, I didn't tighten up my leg straps here. And so when the airplane, when I pulled the D-ring and the chute opened up, you know, I got these straps went right up into the crotch, and if it hadn't been for my jockey shorts keeping everything in center, I wound up with a squeaky voice, and I may not have had a son.
Okay. What were some of the pranks that you or others would pull?
Well, of course, you know, my very best friend who just passed away, and I went all the way through flying school. You know, I found out he was the one that when we were in primary, you know, that they'd short sheet me. I don't know whether you ever heard of that, but after they make your bed up, so it has a collar on it, you know, but when you go to put your feet in, there's no room there to get your legs in.
Yeah.
They also put a saber in bed and hooked it up to firecrackers, and you know, and they blew up my bunk. I didn't find out till he wrote his memoirs here a year ago that my very best friend was the guy that did it. And the reason he did it is because apparently I was always bitching.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I was the youngest guy in the barracks, and you know, some of these guys were married, you know, had families and things, but he was a real interesting experience growing up with them.
Right. Do you have photographs besides the ones that I see here on the wall?
Well, I got a couple of them here. Here's the airplane that I
Hold it up for me. There you go. Good. Come on now. Good, here we are. Got it. What about it?
Well, this airplane was the one, serial number 1902 that I paid $192,000, or signed a check for $192,000. And I flew some 22 missions in this plane. But the day I got shot down, why I was in another plane, and it was serial number 920. It was called Smiling Joy. But this airplane was one of the airplanes that flew in, was first to go into Utah Beach. My group was the first ones to go into bomb the Utah Beach, in other words, to fix foxholes and up for the guys coming in, you know, from the invasion, so they'd have some protection. I was in a reunion in Washington D.C., and this guy came up to me and he says, "Hey Horn, you lost my airplane." And I said, "What do you mean I lost your airplane?" And he said, "Well, you lost my airplane, Smiling Joy, serial number 902. But this airplane was the only one that was shot down out of my squadron on D-Day. Unfortunately, the airplane blew up and everybody was killed." Here's a
Yep. Whoops. And who are these gentlemen?
Well, this is a publicity shot. Was taken from guys from Pennsylvania, and these were guys from my squadron who were from Pennsylvania, and I'm the one on the right here, you know. And of course, this is why the Germans called us Luftgangsters, you know, because you know, of publicity like this. And but these were all my buddies, and I lived with some of them. There's a guy here in front who was shot down before I was, and the airplane broke in two, and his pilot, his head was severed by an 88 millimeter round, and he doesn't know how he got out. And when I walked into the prison camp, Stalag Luft 3, you know, I see him and three other guys from my squadron, and they said, "Hey Horn, what took you so long to get here?" You know. And this is one of the pictures when I was 18 as an aviation cadet, when I first got into the Air Force at San Antonio, Texas.
Right. Okay. That it? That's fine.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, that's good.
You want these, or?
If you want to give them, I'll send them to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'd like to have a copy, I'm sure.
All right.
Okay. So, all right, let's keep moving on here.
Okay.
And the next segment is, well, what did you think of your officers or your fellow soldiers? Did you keep a personal diary?
No, I didn't.
Okay. So what did you think of your fellow soldiers and your officers?
Well, they were outstanding, all of them, and you know, there wasn't a bad one in the bunch. In the same way, and amazed me, and I don't recall in prison camp that there was anybody that I'm sure there were cases where people stole food, but I lived in a room with 15 people, and you know, we were pretty compatible, though we did have a problem with one guy. He was a captain from a fighter pilot from Washington, state of Washington, Seattle, and he wouldn't keep himself clean. Keeping clean was kind of a problem. We didn't have any hot water, and he started to smell so bad that we finally wound up GIing him. Took his clothes off, and with something like Fell's Naphtha soap. I don't know where we got that though, but we GI'd him, and of course he asked for a transfer to get out of the room. He didn't want to live with us anymore. But
Okay.
boredom was one of the biggest problems, you know, and not knowing what the future held for you. And
Being apprehensive. Yeah.
some guys who the VA would never give me PTSD, you know. I'm 100%, but they wouldn't give me PTSD. All they'd give me is situational anxiety, which I'm not sure I know what, because most of my fellow POWs that I know, and I'm president of the Suncoast chapter here in West Palm Beach, why most of them got accepted for PSD. One of my problems was is when I had the interviews with a psychiatrist that you know, I was told him I was okay. I had no problems,
Right.
but which wasn't totally true.
Okay. Do you recall the day your service ended? Where were you?
Well, I was actually in San Antonio, Texas, where I originally started out. As I said, and they sent me home, and then I was on terminal leave, and got my first promotion as a first lieutenant after I was home. And but I signed up at Penn State and started school earlier than December, and worked my butt off. One of the things that kind of irritated me being a GI in school was, of course, I'd been out of high school for 5.5 years, and the profs didn't give you any benefit of it, and if it hadn't been for a real fine woman professor that took the time with us GIs to go over math and trig and algebra and all that stuff, I'd have never made it through. But I really had to work my butt off to get through school. It was kind of tough.
Okay, so that's what you. So pretty much that's what you did after the war. You went back to school.
Yeah, and then I went to work at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, as I said, for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
I was an aeronautical engineer with specialty in aero propulsion, and I worked on just about every jet engine the Air Force had. These are some of my programs up here that I worked on, the Pratt & Whitney F-100 and the F-16 over at the far
corner
left.
there. Yeah.
And this is in the TF-39 and the C-5A, which is a huge transport.
Right.
And so that's what I did for 30 years.
Uh-huh.
And then I retired after 30 years, and I went to work for Pratt & Whitney here in West Palm Beach. And I was head of their lead force program on the F-100, and I worked on the F-100 and some on the F-22. And I retired in 1991.
Okay. Did you continue any of the close relationships that you had formed?
Oh yes, as I said, particularly with, and I'm going to a reunion in Minneapolis where, as I said, our bomb group is going to meet with another bomb group and meet some of the people I've stayed in contact with.
Right.
So we've had reunions every year for many years, but of course when the number of people to attend is getting smaller and smaller because, you know, all of us are in our 80s, and or some of them are in the 90s, and it is getting harder and harder for people to travel.
Right.
And they're passing away. Of course, we're past the World War II veterans are dying at the rate of about 1,200 a day.
Really.
And but I stay in touch with as many of them as I can. My son, who puts out a newsletter, we still send out about 400 newsletters. A lot of them are to family members whose husbands and fathers, grandfathers and things were in our group. And we stay in touch with them too.
Tell me about your veterans organization.
I didn't really join any veterans or organizations because most of them I saw wound up to be drinking clubs.
Gotcha.
A lot of them are good organizations, and they've certainly helped the veterans and the POWs. But I did join the American ex-POWs, and I also
We're
belong
almost
to
done.
the
Less than 5 minutes.
the Military Officers Association of America.
Okay.
I belong to the American ex-POWs.
Right.
Which is an organization.
Did your go ahead? What?
POW at 344th Data Veterans Association.
Yeah, I know. I belong to the.
And what is your name, sir?
I'm Chris.
Chris.
He's my son. My
Yeah.
guardian angel.
We needed to make sure that we got him on record as just being in the building.
Yeah.
Okay. Did your military experience influence your thinking about war or about the military in general?
Well, of course, war is absolutely stupid and is hell, and there ought to be better ways of doing things. I am so disappointed in our country that we went into Iraq and Afghanistan. I just can't wait till we get these guys home.
Right.
These people that we're trying to democratize, have been fighting for thousands of years, and the Muslims, only believe that we're good people only if we're dead, and I really hate to see this. I'm so concerned about these 30 guys that Navy SEALs, were killed,
Right.
and along with the Afghanistan troops, it was such a horrible thing, and I hope they're able to catch the perpetrators.
Okay. How did your last two questions? How did your service and experiences affect your life?
Well, of course, I do believe in a strong military. I am so disappointed that everybody wants to take God out of everything we have in the United States,
Right.
and of course I'm very supportive that anything that's going to help the GIs and the veterans, the POWs, and I don't know. I'm so disappointed in the Congress people. I wish we could vote them all out again. Of course, I'm beginning to ramble now. I guess I don't have much longer to live, but I sure hope this great country comes back to its original stature, and the people finally wise up, instead of fighting each other and trying to take God out of the United States, finally wake up to this.
You feel like there's anything else that you left out? And I want to thank you very much. Is there anything you left out?
I thank you very much for coming, and is there a possibility I can get a copy
Oh,
of
absolutely.
this?
I'm going to have all the copies for all of the gentlemen that I'm interviewing right now at the next meeting.
All right, and I'll have that thing filled out for you.
Fine. Thank you very much, Ed.